From clothes to toys to electronics, the Made in China label has flooded the U.S. market. Could the auto industry be next?
$9,700. Say that out loud. Let it sit. That is not a used car with 140,000 miles and a check engine light. That is a brand new electric vehicle, factory fresh, full warranty, independently crash tested and passed in Europe, built by one of the highest volume automakers on the planet. Available today to anyone who doesn't live in America. The cheapest new car in the United States costs more than double that. Fewer features, shorter warranty, built in a supply chain more dependent on Chinese components than any marketing campaign will ever tell you. One number, two prices. One question Detroit is praying you never ask: what is that gap between $9,700 and $28,000 actually made of? Not tariffs, not geopolitics. It's dealer markup. Finance office profit. Margin stacked on margin. Built over 5 decades with zero serious competition from below. Until now. When you look at a $32,000 entry-level crossover, you are not seeing the cost of the vehicle. You are seeing a number engineered through decades of alignment between manufacturers, dealer networks, and a regulatory system never designed with your interest in mind. The IEA, the International Energy Agency, not a Chinese government body, has documented that Chinese battery cost curves have moved faster than any prior projection. The cost per kilowatt hour has dropped at a rate Western manufacturers did not model and have not matched. The engineering cost of building a competitive EV is no longer the barrier it was in 2019. The barrier now is market access, controlled by tariffs, regulations, and a dealer distribution system legally protected in most American states. Remove those barriers, even partially, and the price of every car on every lot in America has to move. Not because of consumer preference, because of math. The tariff on Chinese manufactured vehicles entering the US is over 100%. You've probably heard this cited as the end of the conversation. It is not. US trade law applies tariffs based on the country of manufacture, not brand origin, not ownership, not the nationality of the engineering team. This is not an obscure loophole. It is the exact mechanism every major foreign automaker has already used to access this market. Japanese manufacturers built American plants. Korean manufacturers built American plants. German manufacturers built American plants. Every one of them used local production to transform their tariff classification and their public narrative simultaneously. Documented regulatory filings show multiple Chinese-affiliated automakers have already explored production partnerships in Mexico and in countries with preferential U.S. trade agreements, structures designed specifically to reclassify country of manufacture. This is not a secret strategy. It is the publicly observable next step in a playbook that has been run successfully here before. The 100% tariff is not a wall. It is a door with a known combination. The people on the other side have the capital and the manufacturing capability to walk through it. The timeline is the only open question, not the outcome. When Japanese brands first entered the American market in volume in the early 1970s, the domestic industry's response followed a predictable sequence. First, dismissal. American consumers would never accept a small Japanese car. Second, cultural skepticism. Quality concerns were raised, amplified through industry-adjacent media. Third, active resistance. Legislative efforts slowed market access, including voluntary export restraints in the early 1980s that protected manufacturer margins, not consumers. Then, the market data told the rest of the story. By the mid-1980s, Japanese brands had captured permanent positions in segments Detroit assumed were protected. By the 1990s, those brands weren't seen as foreign alternatives, they were seen as superior options. The playbook being run today is structurally identical. The scale is larger, the manufacturing capability is more advanced, the capital is greater. And there is one critical difference. When Japanese manufacturers entered, buyers had no mobile internet, no global price transparency, no real-time reviews. Today's American buyer can watch a Chinese EV review filmed in Germany, cross-reference a Euro NCAP safety report from Brussels, and check a Canadian retail listing before finishing their morning coffee. The friction that protected Detroit in 1978 does not exist in 2025. This is the most important mechanism almost no one is talking about. The question, will Americans accept Chinese cars, is the wrong question. Chinese vehicle pricing affects American vehicle pricing without a single unit ever being sold here. In Europe, where Chinese EV brands have entered with competitive pricing, legacy manufacturers responded immediately, not by ignoring the threat, but by accelerating feature inclusion on base trims and compressing entry-level pricing, not out of generosity. Because competitive pressure finally reappeared beneath them. Detroit watches European pricing. The same investment community evaluating American auto stocks is evaluating European manufacturers right now, the ones facing direct Chinese competition. That pressure transmits through financial markets and executive decision-making. And then there is Canada. Chinese-affiliated EV brands are already selling in Canada, real retail volume. Established distribution. No equivalent tariff barrier. Shared border. Overlapping consumer demographics. When a buyer in Toronto compares a $19,000 Chinese crossover against a $34,000 American crossover, same segment, comparable safety ratings, longer warranty, that transaction creates a reference price. And that reference price does not stay in Toronto. It moves through Reddit threads, YouTube comments, and family WhatsApp groups on both sides of the border. Detroit does not need to lose the American market to lose pricing power in the American market. It only needs enough American buyers to know what the alternative costs somewhere close enough to feel real. That is already happening. Every new vehicle sold in the United States carries a federally mandated window sticker, the Monroney label, that discloses the percentage of major parts originating from the US and Canada combined. Almost no buyer has ever read it carefully. Multiple independent analyses of vehicles marketed heavily on American-made identity have found US and Canadian parts content falling well below 60%. Some are below 50%. The remainder, in many cases the majority of component value, originates from global supply chains with substantial Chinese material involvement, particularly in battery chemistry, power electronics, and drivetrain systems. The vehicle being sold to you as an American product is already a global product. The question is not whether American vehicles contain Chinese components. They do. The question is, which manufacturer captures the final assembly margin and the retail markup sitting on top of it? This is on the sticker. Buyers who have read it walk into negotiations with a fundamentally different position. Read the sticker. Information without action is just anxiety with better sourcing. Here are 3 executable moves. Move 1. Monitor Canadian EV market data as your forward signal. Canadian EV sales figures are publicly reported. When Chinese-affiliated brands reach meaningful volume in Canada, and the trajectory says when, not if, historical patterns suggest pricing pressure hits comparable U.S. segments within 18 to 24 months. That is your signal. It is available to anyone willing to look. Move 2. Read the Monroney label before negotiating. Find the parts origin line. If a vehicle is marketed on domestic identity, but the sticker shows sub 50% domestic content, you have documented a discrepancy, legitimate negotiating information most buyers have never raised and most dealers have never been asked about. That asymmetry is entirely in your favor. Move 3. Time your purchase. If you are looking at a vehicle in the $18,000 to $35,000 range and the purchase is not urgent, the documented competitive pressure is projected to hit that price band first and hardest. A delay of 12 to 18 months puts you into a market where reference price anchors have shifted and dealers are responding to pressures that do not currently exist. That is not indecision. That is the most informed positioning available. What is actually stopping a $9,700 car from reaching your driveway? A set of barriers that are real and moving in one direction. The tariff has a known bypass route used by every previous wave of foreign automakers. The quality gap has closed, documented across multiple Euro NCAP test cycles. The brand unfamiliarity is the same unfamiliarity that surrounded Japanese and Korean vehicles at the equivalent stage, and those brands no longer feel foreign to anyone. Detroit's primary response to all of this has been legislative, higher tariffs, national security framing, and content requirement lobbying. Not an accelerated platform transition. Not a structural reconfiguration of the dealership model. Not a serious public commitment to closing the price gap through manufacturing efficiency. When an incumbent industry responds to a structural competitive threat with lobbying instead of innovation, it is telling you what it believes is more cost-effective. It has done the calculation. That calculation is made with your money as the variable being optimized against. Detroit is not afraid of what China can build. Detroit is afraid of what you will do the day you understand what China can build and what that means for the price you should have been paying all along. The question is not whether the pricing environment changes. The question is whether you are positioned to benefit or whether you signed the paperwork 3 months too early. Subscribe. This story is not waiting for permission. And neither should you.